All right.
We're taking all the best old school wisdom and blending it with the top new school methods to bring you the optimal coaching strategies. This is the 80-20 Baseball Podcast with Coach Bo.
Welcome 80-20 baseball community. Welcome all you coaches, parents, players. Welcome to this week's episode. Fired up to be here. When I look at the listener numbers, when I look at, more importantly, where all you listeners are from, and when I get emails and tweets, like Coach Delvin the other day reached out from Georgia to say what's up. When I get emails from all you great coaches from across the country and even across the continent, it fires me up. I am waiting for that email from somebody outside of North America. In fact, we have listeners all over the world. We got, baseball country of all baseball countries outside of the United States. And I know Canada has the second most listeners of this podcast. Many great coaches, great baseball players, great baseball communities in Canada, Australia, right up there. But the Dominican Republic, if you had to pick one country to be the closest thing to a synonym for baseball, La Dominicana has got to be the one. The Dominican Republic, it's incredible how small of an island it is when you think of how many great players it produces and continues to produce. Amazing. They're onto something there. You can learn a lot from them. All the coaches and players down there, they are ahead of the curve on certain things, and it shows with all the great players. In fact, when I see the cities, it actually breaks down like the cities. I don't even know how Spotify or I don't know how they figure this out. I don't really dig into it, but I do see it as the cities or the provinces. So Santo Domingo, anybody familiar with the Dominican Republic, La Dominicana, has heard of Santo Domingo and San Pedro de Macorís. Those are the two most famous places. In fact, growing up as a baseball fan and seeing baseball cards and seeing players' hometowns on the TV, and I know back in the 80s and 90s there wasn't as much on the TV showing. Now they got stats and all sorts of information all the time, but back then I would see San Pedro de Macorís and Santo Domingo as like the key places. In fact, Pedro Martinez, and interestingly enough for me, Ramon Martinez was a much bigger part of my childhood growing up. They come from there. You have another great Dominican. I'm going to tell you a story, and this goes to the listeners that are in the Dominican, but baseball listeners of all sorts. So we're having my high school baseball banquet, and I told you I've shared this out. My high school baseball coach is a Hall of Fame baseball coach. He speaks at the American Baseball Coaches Association. He has in the past. He was so far ahead of the curve on so many things. Coach Mike Curran. Mike Curran is one of the winningest coaches in California history and built an absolute powerhouse program at Esperanza High School. 1986 national championship, 1997 and 93 top 5 finishes. He won a lot of championships at a phenomenal team year in and year out. And part of it was organization, and we did a great job of fundraising. So we had really nice facilities. It was a blue collar area, sprinkled with some white collar, sprinkled with some lower socioeconomic, and it was just a great balance of players and backgrounds and just a baseball hotbed. But nonetheless, he got Tommy Lasorda, or somebody, one of the boosters got Tommy Lasorda to come speak at one of our banquets. And Tommy Lasorda, of course, everybody knows Tommy Lasorda. Tommy Lasorda, the great Dodgers manager, recently passed away. Tommy Lasorda was telling a story, and if anybody knows Tommy Lasorda, they know he's a storyteller. He's very articulate. And I'll tell you, let me on a side note here. If you're into high carb diets, if you're into pasta, if you're into the carbs, nowadays everything's low carb. And I'll tell you what, I definitely think having a lower carb diet, especially processed carbs and stuff, is not a bad way to go. I'm a type 1 diabetic, so I see the aftermath real quick if I eat something that's really not a healthy meal in terms of carbohydrates. But this isn't a health discussion. I just want to bring up Tommy Lasorda was an avid pasta eater. He would talk about eating pasta all the time and all those. The guy lived until like 93 or 92 years old. So anytime you're having an argument against high carbohydrate diets, let's just hope the person you're discussing this topic with doesn't bring up Tommy Lasorda. Sure, it's anecdotal, but it's a very famous person for years was talking about his pasta and lasagna, basically something that isn't really considered a super healthy way to go. And I'm talking like heaping servings of pasta and lasagna and all that over the years. In fact, my dad listened to Tommy Lasorda talk probably 30 years ago in San Pedro, California at a Italian restaurant. He would go and do a weekly talk. stock there at an Italian restaurant, believe it or not. But nonetheless, Tommy Lasorda definitely is one of those genetically lucky to eat the way he did. I know he did the Slim Fast for years. I think he was always on TV with the Slim Fast. But nonetheless, Tommy Lasorda could tell a good story. So he told a story, and I'm going to tie this in with La Dominicana, and more specifically, San Pedro de Macorís. Pedro Guerrero's from there, and Pedro Guerrero was a first baseman for the Dodgers when I was growing up, and kind of well known. And if you followed baseball in the 80s, you knew Pedro Guerrero, big guy, strong guy, physical guy. He played in the major leagues from 78 to 92, Dodgers and Cardinals, 300 batting average, 215 home runs. So he wasn't that bad. He made the major leagues, for crying out loud. And those are, 215 home runs and a 300 batting average in the major leagues is pretty impressive. World Series champion in 81, World Series MVP in 1981, 5-time All-Star. So anyways, Tommy Lasorda's up there at the podium telling this story, and Pedro Guerrero is struggling defensively. He just wasn't the best defensive player from what I understand. Tommy Lasorda said he's having a bad day, that being Pedro Guerrero, and I call him over in the dugout and I say, Pedro, what's going on out there? And Pedro responds, coach, I'm just struggling. I'm thinking too much. I'm in my own head. And he said, okay, well, let's talk about that, work through it. So when they work through that dialogue of the mindset and trying to get more of a positive and productive mindset, Coach Lasorda, Tommy Lasorda, manager Lasorda said, now, Pedro, is there anything else that's going through your mind when you're out there playing defense? And he said, yes, coach. And Tommy Lasorda says, well, what's that? He said, I hope they don't hit the ball to Steve Sax either. And Steve Sax was my favorite player in the 80s. Steve Sax was a second baseman, but he had the yips. He was one of those guys with the yips. And we've talked about the yips on here, and I'm not going to get into it right now. But nonetheless, Steve Sax was a pretty good leadoff hitter, had some pop, got on base, did a good job at the leadoff spot. Defensively, he wasn't your Omar Vizquel. He wasn't your Roberto Alomar. He definitely wasn't that caliber of defensive player. So I thought that was hilarious. Pedro Guerrero was like, yeah, so I'm thinking this, I'm thinking that. So what else are you thinking? Well, don't hit it to that guy either. Now, I told that story at about a level 4 funny. Tommy Lasorda tells every story with the best comedic timing, level 10, level 9 comedy. Go look at videos. He's got some pretty interesting stuff out there on YouTube. But nonetheless, I was looking for a place to slide that story in from years ago. And when I saw San Pedro de Macorís, I thought, Pedro Guerrero, I got to tell the Tommy Lasorda, Steve Sax story. It's funny when these players throw their own teammates under the bus in kind of a funny but true way. Always great to see listeners from the Dominican Republic. Manny Ramirez, Albert Pujols, Juan Marichal, David Ortiz, Vladimir Guerrero Sr., Hall of Famers, Pedro Martinez, Sammy Sosa. The list goes on. So I wanted to give a big shout out to those listeners. I see you in La Dominicana. Vamos, que lo que. It's always good to see the spread, the reach of this podcast. Speaking of listeners, the 80-20 rule applies to the 80-20 baseball listener base. 80% of the listeners, and I'm going to hit this real quick, 80% of our listeners are in a 20-year range. Interesting? Is it coincidence? I don't think so. 80-20 baseball, the 80-20 principle, the 80-20 rule. 80% of our listeners are in a 20-year range. 34 to 54, that's 80% of our listeners. Although I'm not sure how they track all that. I don't know how they track age or whatnot. I listen to podcasts. I don't remember ever putting my age in there, but I don't know. But nevertheless, there it is. The 80-20 rule is showing up in the 80-20 baseball podcast listeners demo. Now, all of you that are 34 to 54. You're exactly who this podcast is for. It's designed for you. With that said, hey, it's still nice to see that the 18 to 34-year-old group is up to 14%. Hey, we got 7% of our listeners are under 27 years old, according to the statistics that I get. It was 0% a year ago. So that's good. Young people wanting to learn. Love to see that. All right, let's transition here. Let's move over to bats. So the other day, I had a text message going with my brother-in-law. My nephew's playing baseball, doing really well, really enjoying it. Probably listening to this. They listen to the show. I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to throw out names right now, but my brother-in-law, nephew, you know who you are. They're talking bats and, kind of trying to decide between a one-piece and a two-piece bat. Well, that's an area that I don't feel is an expertise of mine. What type of bat is better for youth baseball players? So I reached out to two of my most trusted sources on this who actually have kids playing baseball, youth baseball right now. And when I posed the question, two-piece or one-piece bat, what are their thoughts? One of them said, it depends. depends. I like the 2-piece Cat 9 composites, the Cat X. Sometimes the 1-piece bats are better though when it's hot. Said his son swings the DeMarini Zoa and the Cat 9 composite. Both are 2-piece bats. And he said for a 1-piece bat for Little League, the Axe bats are legit. This is a very trusted source of mine, somebody that I feel would have a very good understanding of equipment, of bats, of hitting. In fact, last week when I went back and flew back to Southern California to hang out with all my grade school buddies, he was one of them. He's just crushing. We play wiffle ball and he just crushes everything. Just smokes 20-degree, 15-degree launch angle line drive home runs as good as anybody. He's an athlete. He knows his kid's playing ball right now. Sent me photos of him down at Petco in the Mookie Betts jersey, but at Petco at a recent game. And he said the Cat 9 composites, the Cat X, the DeMarini Zoa, both 2-piece bats. Those are the 2 most recommended by him. And for Little League bats, the 1-piece Axe bat. I'll tell you what, the Axe bat, I'm a big fan of that because of the quality of people / professional players that endorse it. When I hear Mookie Betts endorse something, I'm listening. I know it's just one guy, but I'm listening. When Mookie Betts endorses something, I trust Mookie Betts. I love his personality. I love who he is. I love his mindset. I think he's uber intelligent. I'm a huge fan of what Mookie Betts says, and he's been a big fan of Axe bats since a long time ago. So when I know that background with the Axe bat and the reasoning and logic behind the design of the Axe bat makes perfect sense. And I've handled Axe bats, I've swung some myself, really like how they feel and how they create the path. In fact, I was talking to another friend of mine today on the phone who played pro ball, played 4 years at Long Beach State, played for one of the winningest coaches, one of the best coaches, one of the longest tenured coaches in California high school history at Lakewood High School. And he was telling me on the phone, he said, hey, just love the way it feels, love the way, and he was a hitter. He was a first baseman hitter, played in the Pirates organization. He said if the Axe bats were around when he was playing, he would have been swinging one. He prefers alloy 1-piece if it's a kid who is a line drive hitter, but if the kid is bigger. Now, this is if you have the option to use the 2-piece or the 1-piece. He said, I prefer the allo 1-piece if a kid is more of a line drive hitter, but if the kid is bigger or stronger, hitting a lot of dingers or driving the ball consistently, he'd recommend the composite. Overall, though, prefers a 1-piece because he likes them a little bit stiffer and firmer. Bigger power hitters may like the end-loaded bats. So there's end-loaded versus a more evenly distributed weight bat. The end-loaded bat he recommended for power hitters that may prefer an end-loaded bat, E-N-D, end-loaded bat, would be the Goods bat by DeMarini. With that said, he said most hitters that he's come across prefer a balanced bat, a balanced weight bat. So that bat may not be the best choice for those. There you go. I just wanted to share that out. I know bats are expensive. You want to pick the right bat because they are so expensive. I think going on the Facebook market page, some of those secondhand places, great opportunity, great idea. Now, you got to be careful, right? You got to be careful. You don't want a dented or dinged bat, which eventually, and a lot of times with these metal bats, quickly they become dented, they lose their pop, or they're not taken care of, or the kids hit them against things or whatever. With that said, I would keep your eyes peeled. Facebook market page, a search, maybe a wide search for somebody looking to unload a metal bat in your price range. Another thing you could do is get a team bat, team bats. And if each family chips in $50 and there's 12 kids, well, now you're looking at $600 to go play with. You could get a couple $300 bats and use them as your game bats and then raffle them off at the end, or somebody can just buy them outright. I know that limits the team to just those 2 bats, but that's not a bad idea for the games. But here's the thing that you have to keep in mind, is you probably know where I'm going with this. Your practice bat should match size and weight and feel for the most part. You could go get a beat up one. Your practice bat does not need to be the best of shape. In fact, I would consider using a bat of equal feel, meaning the grip, the handle, the weight distribution, the length, the barrel size, have that exactly the same as the bat your team can go in. I'm just saying, if you don't feel like throwing over $300-400, maybe your team could go in, put in $50, put in $60 and get 2 really nice bats that the coach takes care of and you only bring out for the games. At the end of the year, you could raffle them off. At the end of the year, you could have 1 or 2 families just purchase them outright from the other players, maybe at a half price or something or whatever. I'm just throwing out ideas that you can run with you. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying these are some ideas that you can use. If you do it that way, in fact, even if you can go out and just write a check or buy the nicest bat, I would have a practice bat with less pop that matches exactly to the game bat. That's the key. I would have one with less pop because it's going to make the hitter work harder to have more success. If you've listened to the last almost 150 episodes, you know I am a massively huge fan of making practice more challenging than the games. This would be a great way to challenge hitters with a bat with less pop in practice. It exposes flaws. That's a big thing. It exposes flaws. Hitters aren't going to get lucky with a bat that's a little dented, that doesn't have the pop. They're not going to get that lucky, I should say. They're going to get exposed a little bit more. Same idea like with a wood bat. If you get hit on the inside part of that bat, you could break that bat very easily. Well, a metal bat's not going to break. So yeah, your hand's going to shake a little. There's going to be some vibration. It probably won't feel great, but a wood bat's going to break. It's going to give instant feedback. That was not a pitched one to swing at, or that wasn't a good swing, or a combination of the two. So the metal bat, I'm a big fan of having a practice bat, not as good as the game bat. One, you save your game bat for the games, so it's got max pop stored up. Two, you're going to have hitters that are really going to have to be dialed in with their swing and their hitting approach and their timing to get results, because they're not going to get any favors, or they're not going to get much luck from that bat that's a little more dented, a little older. But it saves you, on top of that, saves you money. It saves you money. So you have a cheaper practice bat, you save your good bat for the game, match them up equal across the board. The grip should feel the same, the length, the weight distribution for the most part, the barrel size, of course, and of course the overall weight, the total ounces. So I wanted to get into a take on bats. It came up this week. I was having a discussion, wanted to share it with you. Now here's the thing. At the end of the day, the bat is not the biggest difference maker. The bat is not the biggest difference maker. In fact, equipment is not the biggest difference maker. The biggest difference maker for hitting is the hitting approach, being on time and having a good approach and swinging at the right pitches. I'm going to read an excerpt from my article that's on 80/20 Baseball. This is from the Hitting Plans, Hitting Approach article. This is the segment, or I should say the part of the article called The Trout Farm. I'm going to read right from it. Quote, "Before we jump into the nuts and bolts of each plan, of each hitting plan that is, let's take a swing by the Trout Farm to see an example of how even the best hitter, using the best equipment on the planet, when hitting without the correct plan, can still fall for the pitcher's bait, hook, line, and splitter. In other words, a hitter with the world's best swing, or one of the best swings on the planet, Mike Trout, and I'm paraphrasing to ad-lib a little onto this article. Mike Trout, one of the best swings on the planet, one of the strongest, most physically gifted hitters on the planet, using the most expensive, finest equipment with the best training resources. Even he, without the correct hitting plan, can fall for the pitcher's bait, hook, line, and splitter. It was summertime a few years ago, and I had scored 4 Diamond Club tickets from my best friend to see the Angels-Yankees game. On top of that, a buddy of mine, Heldy, speaking of the Dominican, he was an ex-pro baseball player, born and raised. He's a Dominicano, was in town visiting, and I met him through my wife's family, friends of theirs, played professional baseball, and he was in town. Now, fast forward to mid-game, and as I was returning to my seat with some deliciously loaded nachos, I heard the stadium's sound system begin to thump loudly, a little more out of the norm. As I sat down, I peered over at the Angels on deck circle just in time to see the great Mike Trout walking toward the plate. Mike was chomping on his gum and had his confident swag going on. The stadium was getting loud as the incredible Trout was coming up to bat. He was coming up to the plate with the bases loaded. On the mound was Masahiro Tanaka, a quality pitcher that had held the Angels scoreless to that point in the game, but had put himself in a tough spot after losing his command for a few hitters, allowing the bases to fill with Angels. The count was now 3-1, 3 balls, 1 strike, and the home crowd at Angel Stadium was loud and the bases were packed with Trout's teammates. What happened next was quite shocking, even for a guy like me that played professionally, that played high-level college, been going to major league games since the mid-'80s. What happened next made it crystal clear that Ted Williams, when he said the most important thing, hands down, there's no close second place. The number one thing when it comes to being a good hitter is to get the right swing at the right pitch, to get a good pitch to hit. And what happened next was a clear example evidence of why he was so right. The most important thing for a hitter with less than 2 strikes is a swing at a pitch he can drive hard, line drive, hard ground ball, ball to the wall, in the gap, down the lines, over the fence, something he can drive hard while laying off everything else. So the bases are loaded, the count's 3-1. I'm going to add something in. As of today, and I don't know what the results of the game of today, but Trout up till today had hit a home run in 7 straight games. He's hit a home run in 7 straight games. The major league record is 8 straight games. The Angels team record was like 3 or 4 straight games. He's hit a home run in 7 straight games. He has 35 home runs in 100 games this year. So backing up to that game, Trout clearly had the confidence going. He got the crowd going, but the thing he didn't have was the thing he needed most, and that was plan A. What unfolded next clearly illustrates that without using the correct hitting plan, even the best hitters can look as bad as the 12th best hitter on a T-ball team from Montana. As Tanaka delivered the pitch, it was immediately clear that it wasn't going to be anywhere near the strike zone. That's the 3-1 pitch. The release point was wildly off and the ball was steeply angled downward. Remember, with the 3-1 count, Trout should have been in plan A. He should have been in plan A mode, 3-1 count. He should have been looking for a pitch that he could drive or at least at a minimum hit hard. However, the pitch landed in the dirt. Let me back up. There were 2 outs. So just putting the ball in play, scores a run, doesn't count here. Okay, so there's 2 outs. You got to hit the ball hard. You need a hit. There's no sac flies. There's no ground ball moving the runners up here. He should have been looking for a pitch he could drive hard rather than assume he was going to get a hitter's pitch. However, the pitch that Tanaka threw on 3-1 landed in the dirt 3 feet in front of home plate. I had great seats for this. These were the best seats I'd ever had at an Angel game. I was at a 45-degree angle, almost field level, in the Diamond Club section. I had a great view of this pitch, and the pitch landed 3 feet in front of home plate. When I say 3 feet, it bounced 3 feet in front of home plate, not 3 feet in front of the catcher. It bounced in front of the plate, which is nowhere close. You're talking 3, 4, 5 feet from the strike zone. And yet, the great Mike Trout swung. He probably couldn't have reached the pitch if he was swinging a canoe oar. Mike uncharacteristically was guessing at the plate. He had a terrible approach on that pitch. And not just that pitch, as you'll see the 3-2 pitch also. Now let's give some context to the situation. There have been over 10,000 major league hitters, and Mike Trout is already in the top 300 for the most career walks. He doesn't get there by routinely going up to bat without a plan. One doesn't get that high up on the walk leaderboard by swinging without restraint. Trout is an extremely intelligent hitter and his physical skills are off the charts. When he's healthy, he's the best hitter in today's game. Yet, without the correct hitting plan, even Trout can look really, really terrible. Having lived minutes from where Mike Trout played all of his home games, seeing him play often, that 3-1 swing had me a bit shocked. But it was the 3-2 pitch, the 3-ball 2-strike, the full count pitch that removed all doubt that Mike was clearly without a solid hitting plan during that at-bat. On the 3-2 pitch, Tanaka delivered a fastball on the inner third, and Trout watched it go by for strike 3. His bat didn't even move. Now the inning was over with his 3 teammates left on base, and his team still losing. According to Fangraphs, Mike Trout has seen over 21,000 pitches in his career, and his contact rate is 95%. For the area in which Tanaka's fastball passed through on that pitch. We all know Mike Trout easily has the ability to crush a middle-in fastball, inner third, 94 miles an hour, four-seam. He has the ability to crush that pitch all day, every day. It wasn't elevated. It was a little bit lower, right where he likes it. But what Mike didn't have on that 3-2 pitch, he had the ability. Absolutely. He had the equipment. He had the bat to hit that ball 450 feet. But what he didn't have was a good approach. He didn't have the right plan. So I'm going to end that part of the article there. You can go read the article over at 8020baseball.com. You can get your drill design guide over there emailed right to you. There's a dozen articles, a dozen videos. You want to up your coaching game? You came to the right spot. And I'm all glad you show up. I'm glad you're here. It fires me up to be here because of all you great listeners, you coaches, you parents that want to bring a better approach to the field, to the baseball community. Speaking of which, next week, you don't want to miss next week. Next week, I am going to start a 3-part series that I guarantee will help you win more games and, more importantly, simultaneously will help you coach your players to be better human beings. They're not mutually exclusive. We're going to get into that. I'm going to share with you a specific topic. We're going to have some other parts to the episodes, but the 3 main courses over the next 3 episodes are going to circle around one particular topic that will help you, your team, win more games, but more importantly, simultaneously help you help your players to be better human beings, better adults down the road. You're going to want to hear it. And you know where I'll be? I'll be back here with all of you next Tuesday when our next weekly episode comes out. Always great to be here with all of you, 80/20 baseball coaching community. Until next week, take care of your health so you can be the most energetic, upbeat coach when you get out there and you can deal with some of those kids acting like knuckleheads and whatnot. You can have patience and be the best coach with energy. Take care of your health so you can also take care of your families, your good friends, and take this information, take it out there, put it in, start using it. You need to apply it to have the success. It's proven, it will work. Take it out there, start using it, and until next week, adios.
This has been the 80/20 Baseball Masterclass. Take it to the field.